Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto Was Abused and Obtained Mokuton, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down. Naruto had never felt such a cold dance through his bones, causing his organs to tremble. His body to shiver in a defensive mechanism to create warmth. The question of whether they'd reach the snow was a stupidly infuriating one at this point. If the sea had been frozen, Naruto wouldn't have found it out of place. The mountains looked like solid ice, but they were just covered by blankets of snow. Dark clouds gathered above, shutting any hope of the sun. Each landscape had its own atmosphere. If it wasn't deathly cold, it was deathly hot. Yet to the citizens, it was the normal. For the next couple of weeks, for them, this was the new normal. But this was damn cold. The only person who'd shown excitement was the film director. He'd shouted for the ship to halt. The large ice stranded within the sea would do just fine for filming. Of course, everyone would be out, getting battered by the cold while he sat next to heater, blankets covering for measure. Some mission this was turning out to be. You'd think the fire would be full of fires after seeing the snow. Naruto said in a mild tone, daring not to venture out into the snow. There are other nations like this. The samurai nation is like this, replied Kakashi calmly. At least we have reached the snow. We can now eat something different and get some space. Felt like I was locked up in jail. Is the village far from here? Not far, but we are there. Does the snow have a shinobi village? Kakashi glanced at Sakura for a second before looking into the opening. He was getting a little worried. Sandayu wasn't completely honest with them and he worried that things could boil all over. There would be no reinforcements from this place. But he trusted that Naruto and Sasuke could get the job done 9ne. The problem was protecting the civilians. While their duty was to protect the princess, they couldn't just watch the others get in trouble. Many people required numbers, regardless of the strength of the enemy. Well, at least creating thousands of clones for Naruto was nothing. It could always be a fallback plan just in case. As far as I know, yes, the Jonin replied. They are different from us. They use some armor called chakra armors. I hope we don't come across anything like that. A problem? Sasuke asked with an expressionless look. But inwardly, he was dancing in joy. He needed something troublesome to alleviate the boredom and a bag to pound to remove the frustrations he felt with being stuck in this ship with no other way of escaping. Naruto had been right. The little space to move had started to feel like they were in jail. It was doing the same thing over and over again with each day. Yes, I haven't come across a shinobi wearing one in a long time. I'm sure they have evolved them. Kakashi replied in a thoughtful tone. You need to be on the lookout the moment we arrive. Things can escalate at any moment. Of course. For now, let us check this place before they set up their equipment, ordered Kakashi. They all jumped out of the ship. The second Naruto touched the snow, he felt a cold chill down his spine. He needed something over him or he was going to end up freezing. Those heaters were needed while they stand guard. This was like he was standing inside a freezer while butt naked. He surveyed the area with a keen eye. This snow reminded of Haku, the kind-hearted shinobi who died to save his master. A sad reality. But that was the shinobi world. That first mission had taught him the brutality of this journey he'd started. There were no merry songs while out on missions. Death was a working hazard. You went, but there was no guarantee of ever returning. In his case, the villagers would rejoice. Few would mourn his death. A sad reality for him that made him slightly miserable. He hoped that things could change. For the better, in the near future. Looks okay, Sasuke said after he was done with his round. Yeah, Naruto replied in thought, his mind absorbed by his life-sucking thoughts. Sasuke stared, curious about the sudden loss of attention in Naruto. It wasn't the first time he saw Naruto with that kind of look. It always seemed to resurface whenever he was alone. Yet, Sasuke wouldn't ask. What? Sasuke shrugged. Naruto put his hands inside his pockets and then walked away from Sasuke, heading back to the ship. The crew would be busy setting up the scene and their equipment. Nothing really seemed to be fixed in some cases. The director was a whimsical junkie who went with whatever he saw fit. It took about an hour for everything to be set up, and like usual, the princess had to be dragged in front of the camera but became majestic when the lights flashed and the director yelled march. The many extras were standing within the snow, the princess doing her part with her guards. The antagonist in the movie was standing some distance away, reciting his lines perfectly as if he was a true villain. They should have gotten a real one. Then again, such a person wouldn't think about killing people on the film set. It would no longer be a film but a reality show. Ah, how Naruto wished he could be part of the show. You look disappointed, Kakashi asked him. Naruto glanced at the Jonin. He didn't have his usual book at hand. In the past days, he had his book while they were filming. Then again, there was no threat in the ship. There was nothing even here, but you could never be sure about anything. The world was full of surprises. I'm not getting part in the film. My chance of fame is slipping away. Naruto replied with a pout. You can't do your job while going after the camera. It is possible. I'll be a little closer to the princess. I think my acting skills can even rival that of the princess. Kakashi smiled genuinely. That may be true. At least some of us are getting a kick out of this. Naruto was staring at Sakura, who had her eyes on the male she liked. A truly bad taste in men, he shook his head. And then his eyes snapped toward the huge boulders on the sides. Company, Kakashi announced in a serious tone. Take formation. He ordered and then jumped in front of Kayuki and her men. Come out, the Jonin shouted. There was no response. The antagonist stared at the Jonin. What are you talking about? There was no response from anyone behind Kakashi. The man in robes and a staff looked confused for a moment. This wasn't according to the script. And yet, the cameras were rolling. Oh, I see, are you friends of the princess? Welcome to the snow country. Nader stepped out of the snow, hands folded across his chest, smirk on his lips. His eyes stared directly at the Kayuki. Princess. Welcome home. Kakashi turned to Kayuki for a moment, seeing her shocked look. This was not part of the script. This was real danger. He'd known something was up when he saw that crystal and how Sandai was pushing for her to return to this country. Did the Sandai know? Either way, this was not what he expected. You, the Jonin took a stance. A pleasure to meet you again, Hitaki Kakashi. I hope this time around, you won't run away from me. This was not the ideal place to fight. There were too many people and anything could happen. An attempt to remove the threat in this location would be like playing the lottery. They just needed to repel and get everyone else into the ship before moving away. Everyone, get back into the ship. The moment he yelled those words, Kakashi's eyes flashed behind, sensing some movements. Sensing movement, Naruto's eyes flashed on both sides. There were two enemies coming directly toward them. They were moving fast along the snow. Yet, his eyes could clearly match their speed. Years of training help. The target was the princess. He only shot Sasuke a look and focused on his opponent. Sakura would act as the last guard to Yuki. Mizore was sliding along the snow in speed, having burst out from below. He was staring directly at the princess. The brats couldn't do anything to him, not when he had his chakra armor. He stretched out his left arm when the blonde brat moved to intercept him. Get out of my way. He charged before releasing his retractable arm. The arm shot out like a bullet and hit the blonde on his throat. But the moment he did so, the blonde disappeared in a puff of smoke. Another Naruto burst from the ground while Mizore was speeding, just in front of the man. Naruto braced himself for impact. The rest of his body was buried in snow. He strengthened his hands with chakra as the hovering board neared him. He flashed out his hands, grabbing the board with all his strength. It came to a halt. But the speed pulled him slightly from the ground. Had it been a clone, it probably wouldn't have been to withstand the impact. Mizore cursed while falling over. He couldn't control his body. At this rate, he was going to hit the snow in a heap. But at least, he should be getting close to the princess. Why hadn't he even attached the snowboard to himself? Such nuisances wouldn't be happening. Hello. Mizore's eyes snapped below while he was falling. Another Naruto. Right below him. He was going to fall on the brat. What trick was he using? Shadow clones. Solid ones at that. He couldn't be that fast to have moved that fast. 4 roots burst from the snow below him, spreading toward his body. In his position, he couldn't do anything. But he still believed in his armor. He grinned, taking his focus away from the princess and to the blonde below him. His armor could withstand the attack. He stretched out his right hand, in attempt to grab the blonde by his face. The roots slammed into his armor but started to disintegrate the moment they hit him. However, there was still enough force behind the jutsu to send him upwards, unharmed as he was. Naruto was surprised that his jutsu didn't work. The armor was protecting the man. But he still had another plan. While airborne, Mizore flipped to the side. The princess was just below him, guarded by the little girl. The problem for him was the blonde. He held out his left hand seeing that the blonde was still lying on the ground. His retractable arm stretched out, flashing toward the blonde. He didn't move as the armored arm slammed into his chest, but once more the blonde disappeared in a puff of smoke. Before he could retract his arm, 2 more clones burst from the snow. When had the blonde even hid him there? Another clone appeared just where his arm was, holding a kunai at hand. Another was just where his snowboard was. The clone snatched it up and took a single step forward. While he tried to retract his arm, the clone on the ground swung its kunai, cutting the thread holding his arm, much to his surprise. But there was no moment to dwell on it as the other clone hurled his snowboard toward him. Mizore quickly folded his hands across his chest seeing it was where the snowboard was going to hit. The board hit him, but the second it touched his hands, it exploded. Boom, he cursed silently, gritting his teeth in pain. The explosion was minimal but the sparks had coursed through his body like lightning. There was a resounding explosion up in the air of intense flames with a bit of black within them. The flames brought a wave of heat for a moment. Mizore burst out of the flames, lunging to a distance away to safety with a furious look on his face. Mokuton, wooden locking prison. Mizore's eyes glanced to the sides as wooden pillars burst from the snow. They were all around him. His only method of escaping was above. But before he could jump, the pillars joined, locking him within. Naruto turned away from the man and faced at Sakura. The main objective here had to get the princess to safety. And everyone else. This wasn't a good place to fight. What is wrong with her? He asked Sakura, seeing the princess sprawled on the snow. Hands around her head, with haunted eyes. It was like she was reliving a bad dream. Mental issues, Sakura grunted. Run, Naruto ordered. He created 3 solid clones. The clones picked up the princess and then Sandayu before dashing toward the ship. Sasuke moved at the same time as Naruto. But unlike the blonde, he was quick off his feet. While darting through the snow toward his opponent, he took out a couple of shuriken from his pouch and then hurled them toward her. Fubuki didn't bother trying to dodge the shuriken. A smirk merely formed across her lips as she continued rushing toward the black-haired teen. The shuriken shattered into bits upon crashing into her chest. She immediately took advantage of the situation by doing a couple of hand seals. Sasuke jumped up after sensing a wave of chakra from below. Ice burst out of the snow, nearly catching him on his feet. But he blurred away just in time to avoid the jutsu. He landed a distance away, but not too far off from the princess. There was no telling that if he tried to drag the woman away, she'd follow him. Her objective was the princess, so he always had to stand in the way. There was no time to think as he was forced to jump into the air once more as ice was pulled out from the snow once more. While still airborne, Sasuke took out a kunai with an explosive tag, threw it down at the ice. The tag exploded into a fiery of intense crimson flames. The flames seemingly engulfed Sasuke. Fubuki smiled and then turned her attention toward the princess. There was no need to waste time. She quickly dashed toward Kyuki. While running through the snow, a smoke bomb fell in front of her and then exploded. She could see nothing within the smoke. The wings on her back flapped as she tried to take off into the air. Though she managed to take off slightly, her eyes snapped to her legs as she felt something. 2 threads hand bundled her legs together. Without turning back, she glanced behind, and saw Sasuke standing still with his hands held together. These people were not strong as those he has faced. It was nothing compared to Zabuza. And training in the same field with Naruto really did help. Sasuke felt like he was powerful. He couldn't help but put a smirk on his lips as he pulled the wires. The sudden pull dragged the woman down, slamming her on the snow with her head first, getting buried. Sasuke gathered oxygen within his lungs, measuring the release of his chakra careful. Within one large outtake, breathed out a stream of crimson flames, and they spread through the wires. Fubuki snarled as she spat out snow as she pulled out herself from the snow. Her legs were still bundled together and flames were spreading toward her. She pulled up ice from the snow, freezing the wires. More ice formed, colliding with the flames. Steam rose upon the mixture of the two elements. While trying to cut the wire, Fubuki glanced up. Sasuke had suddenly flashed just above her. She didn't give the Uchiha a time to attack her. Ice burst out around her within seconds of Sasuke appearing. Sasuke frowned slightly but decided against wasting chakra to melt the ice. Just as the ice was going to freeze him, he did a replacement jutsu, replacing himself with a heater. Looking good, Sasu-chan. Naruto stated as Sasuke flashed behind him, their back against the ship that was moving back to the sea. You move well, surprised you used Mokuton like that. Naruto shrugged. Their armor is bothersome with other jutsu. It requires something like brute force to get through. Besides, there wasn't time for something elaborate. The princess is in the ship. Sasuke couldn't help but grin. We can go ahead and attack. The one you had is still locked up. With Kakashi still busy with his opponent, there was nothing against what Sasuke was suggesting it. Naruto shared the Uchiha's grin. Tag team. Sometimes when Sasuke was in a good mood, he didn't mind working well with him. It was time they tested how well they moved either way. Let's go then. Fubuki glanced toward where Mizore was locked up and then at the two brats. The princess was already at the ship. Failure. Doto wasn't going to be pleased. Especially when it had been just brats who stood in the way. It was better to deal with them now rather than later. They were only going to be a nuisance later on. She saw a shuriken twisting along the air toward her. Didn't they learn? This wasn't going to do anything to her. The armor created a wall of chakra that stopped even those kind of attacks. Then again, they were just brats. She waited until the shuriken hit her, but much to her surprise, the piece of metal didn't shatter. It exploded into a puff of smoke. Two hands burst out of the smoke, grabbing her around the shoulders. She was pulled into the smoke, while being twisted around. The person wrapped his legs around her waist, hands now around the back of her neck, her hands were pressed in. He was holding onto her very tightly. She gritted her teeth, trying to move free, but she felt like she was gripped by a strongman. Let me go, she yelled at the blonde. No can do. This armor is proving to be a problem. Your biggest weapon. We want to see what it will take to destroy it. While darting toward Fubuki and Naruto's clone, Sasuke held a kunai with a wire tied around it. It was an easy target as Naruto had her in one place. The blonde never did let go once he held you. He was like a magnet. And it was going to take stabbing him on the gut for that woman to get him off her. The kunai twisted around her legs, just above her ankle, and the wire tied her legs together. Sasuke pulled, causing the two to fall over to the snow, with Naruto hitting first and Fubuki atop of him. Chidori. The sound of birds chirping. His one move learned from Kakashi. The lightning cutter at hand, Sasuke increased his speed. Once he was closer, he bent down while driving his jutsu toward Fubuki's chest. The lightning burst when it made contact, but was unable to break through at once. He pushed further, trying to pierce through the chakra shield until something in the armor cracked. He pushed further, and the armor started to crack. But it was still not enough. Why, I am not surprised that you couldn't do it. Naruto suddenly said after appearing from nowhere. He landed on Sasuke's right side, holding a bunch of explosive tags. Sasuke stopped, and then shot Naruto a glare before jumping back as Naruto dropped the explosive tags. Fubuki swore. This was an overkill. What was the blonde made out of anyway that he didn't budge? Her chakra was cracked. Any more of that, and it would have been destroyed. Those explosive tags. The merciless brats were trying to kill her. By the way, I'm also going to explode. The clone stated. This isn't how I like to do things, but if I explode, it should dent this armor. And the explosive tag will do it. Best of all, a closed area ensures that you receive the full force of the explosion. Fubuki wanted to glare at the blonde, but she wasn't in a position to do anything. He was not normal. There was something he was doing to strengthen his body. She was taking chakra, but he didn't appear bothered by it. Do your best, she replied confidently but with a hint of frustrations. Mokuton, wooden locking prison. He created the same jutsu he used on Mizore. This time, he encased both his clone and Fubuki within. He did a quick jump, landing beside Sasuke once more. This is how it is done. Boom. There was only the sound of the explosion, but not even smoke came through the pillars. They held on firmly until flames started burning through. Naruto slapped himself across the face. Smart, Naruto. Very smart. Fire will always burn wood. While the flames were still burning, Kakashi flashed behind both Naruto and Sasuke. He put a hand on their shoulders and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. We had things covered. Sasuke's first words when they appeared in the deck of the ship. The crew was marveling at the great piece they had just captured. We have more things to worry about. We had them. Naruto put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Smiling, he said, "We got a part in the movie, isn't that a great thing?" Kakashi sighed. At least, they managed to get out of this without any casualties. In the next one, they would be more prepared. If the enemy had gotten desperate, they could have gone for the ship. There are too many people here. Our first priority is to them. Sasuke still grumbled. They were winning. They probably would have won if they stayed to fight. When he was teaming up with Naruto, they could defeat anyone. You think we got her? Yup. Naruto replied with a nod. Why were they even attacking her? Good question, but something they would talk about with Princess Yuki and Sandayu. He hadn't thought things would come to this point. But it was happening and they had to deal with it. If anything, things seemed like they could go well. Kakashi no longer had to worry too much about his two students. At least, even Sasuke was making good use of the jutsu he taught him and Naruto was using Mokuton. We will talk about it. But first, let me say both of you did well. I'm proud of you. The Jonin praised with an ice smile. Hard work pays. Naruto flashed Kakashi a grin. Sasuke, though, seemed to be caught between two thoughts. Whether he should smile in pride or just grunt. In the end, he did neither but just folded his hands across his chest and looked away. Evidently. Kakashi replied to Naruto. At least even Sakura had stood her ground. When they had just started, she would have outright refused to take Naruto's instruction. But now, she did as told. But standing her ground doesn't mean she would have done a better job. After all, her illusions would not have worked against those opponents. She truly was a mismatch in this team. She needed to improve or else the Sandaime would make true to his word. He glanced at Naruto. The blonde had better command of the team. Sasuke was of course the smarter one. But he sometimes lacked compassion and became too engrossed in the mission he looked away from his teammates. Sometimes he did better. But when it came to looking after the needs of the team, Naruto did it better. Both nonetheless did what needed to be done when it needed to be done. He would have thought Naruto would hesitate, but he could be like Sasuke, just less ruthless. No, much more ruthless than Sasuke. After all, Sasuke always acted based on emotions, and when it came to it, Naruto could be a rational being, discarding all emotions. But those were not the most powerful enemies we have faced. Naruto added. Sasuke nodded in agreement with Naruto. He was happy that he had managed things without getting beat, but shinobi from the Great Five posed more danger than these. Were standards really that different? They depend on their armor. But they are strong shinobi. Kakashi responded in a firm tone. Naruto, you were employing shadow clones. You just don't throw them. But you use them efficiently to create more bodies. Anyone would struggle if they are not used to it. Shinobi from this side are not exposed to the many things in the elemental nations. Well, sometimes, tactics win battles. We almost got Zabuza despite him being powerful because of tactics. Naruto replied, shrugging his shoulders. Brutal force doesn't always get the job done. If you know the weakness of your opponent, you can defeat them. Bingo books are useful for this purpose. Kakashi paused, turning to the incoming Sakura. The girl looked relieved about something. Everything okay? She nodded. She is fine. She just fainted after shouting that she was not going back. She appeared to be reliving some past trauma. That is the case. You know something. That man did call her Princess Kayuki and you looked shocked when you heard it. She plays a princess, but there appears to be something more to the story. Sasuke was staring at Kakashi, waiting for an answer. If it is true, she is a real princess of the Snow Country. I'll discuss the details once I have privately spoken to Sandayu. Sandayu glanced at Kakashi and smiled weakly. He was sitting beside Princess Kayuki's bed. The woman was sitting up, an expressionless mask on her face. The Jonin remained standing, watching the two for a moment before finally speaking. I suspected something when I first saw you. Kakashi started speaking. You probably do not remember me. He said to Yuki. He was the one who saved her life from certain death years ago. She was still a child then. She glanced at him coldly. I'm not going to the snow. We have already gone through this, princess. We are already there anyway. You tricked me, Sandayu. There is nothing for me there. There was nothing but pain and despair. That cold land that made your heart cold had nothing for her. She was fine in the land of fire. Happy, no. But she was alive and not facing any tragedy. There is something for you. Your people are waiting for you to return to your home. I have already spoken to them. We will return. Sandayu replied forcefully and then looked at Kakashi. I'm sorry I kept this from you. But I requested you specifically because you already dealt with those people before. What was with these people and putting his team in danger? You should have told us the real reason. We indeed have to protect the princess, but not having any knowledge of who we face puts my team at risk. I understand, but whether you decide to turn away or not, we are still going to take our country back. I have gathered enough people to fight. Kakashi shook his head. Are they shinobi? No. Civilians who are willing to give anything for their country. A good thing but unnecessary. You can't send civilians to fight against shinobi. They will just get killed. Don't do anything. We will deal with it. Kakashi said firmly. He smiled. Even if I ordered the team to sit back and wait for reinforcements, Naruto and Sasuke would not permit it. They have already tasted battle and will say they will be more than enough. They are going to get killed. You should just save your lives and return home. But if you want to die needlessly, do so. A woman who had her hopes crushed. When someone crushes your childhood, you start thinking they were all powerful. For Kayuki, she couldn't tell the difference in power because she was just a civilian. Her mind was scarred by the tragedy of her childhood. She found it impossible to look beyond this mountain. He ignored her words and faced Sandayu. What is it about the crystal? Yes. Your uncle then. My father said the crystal was a key to the treasure of the snow. When you spoke about treasure, one was thinking about money, anything of monetary value. I will need that for safekeeping. That is what he wants, not you. Life was unfair at times. Not everyone had demons. And you did not apply F0R it. They just rammed into your life and then left you scarred for life, and sometimes finding a knife to be very attractive in spilling out your guts. Sakura had no such demons. Everyone in the team had issues. But Sakura was careless. She had nothing to worry about because she was free. It was no wonder she didn't take this life of a kunoichi seriously. Perhaps if she experienced a little bit of Princess Yuki's misery, she would take this business very seriously. Naruto hoped that she wouldn't realize the hardship until it was too late. But who knew? The only struggle she had in this life was trying to win over her beloved Sasuke. Such thoughts made him envious. It was a cruelly bitter feeling that made his eyes turn cold. He shook his head, leaned against the frame of the ship, and stared at the bottomless water. Kakashi was standing on his right, with Sasuke on the left and Sakura by Sasuke's side. Their sensei had just finished explaining to them what the issue with Kayuki was. We still continue with the mission? Sasuke asked. Of course. Good. A little bit relieved. There had been the possibility that Kakashi would make them wait for others. There may not be that many enemy to encounter as far as Sandayu is concerned. We will not be going against an entire village, but against one man and his henchmen, Kakashi said in a stern tone. He gave Sakura a stern look. The look made the girl flinch. I considered not saying anything or even just tell you only, but we are a team and I want everyone to know this. What? Sakura asked cautiously. She was sure she wasn't going to like what she was going to hear. You're severely outmatched in the team. You need not be as strong as both Naruto and Sasuke. But as things stand, you don't offer anything to the team and it creates an imbalance. Whenever there is a mission, none of us can do anything without having to worry that you'll hold your own. We always have to worry about you. There are missions that we might not even be able to do because you are not ready for them, and going there only threatens your life. The Sandaime Hokage has said that if things continue like this, you will be removed from the team. Kakashi glanced at his other students. Sasuke looked indifferent and Naruto, well, he was Naruto. There was just a raised brow, but he couldn't read anything from the blonde. That is unfair. Kakashi shook his head. How many times have you been saved, Sakura? She blinked, unable to say anything. She couldn't be removed from Sasuke's team. No way was she going to accept that decision. The Jonin smiled. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand the situation you are in. You need to grow up, Sakura. And this is your chance to do so. I have to submit a report to the Sandaime. Your reaction from henceforth will determine whether you stay or leave the team. He paused. Rest up. We don't know what awaits us when we reach our destination. A little unexpected but not irrational. There was always a chance that Sakura could be killed. Anyone could be killed really. But chances were higher with Sakura. Don't let it get to you. That is the test Kakashi-sensei is giving you. Strength is not merely physical prowess but also mental strength. There are things you can do to improve on. Do that. Don't try to match Sasuke. Give it your best. That is what is required of you. How low had she fallen that she had to receive a lecture from Naruto? This was sick. She comforted herself by thinking about her beloved Sasuke. What do you think, Sasuke-kun? The Uchiha merely shrugged with indifference. Naruto sighed. He wanted to tell her she was a hopeless little girl, but he didn't want to break her spirit. Wherever Tsunade was, there was always ruckus. If she was drunk and losing money, things normally had to be flying about. It was no different this time. Jiraiya had been welcomed by a flying man, crashing through the door, and a second later, a clearly drunk Tsunade stormed out of the building. The dutiful Shizune following her from behind with their pet pig. What a waste of meat, he thought mildly. Tsunade did notice him, but she acted as if she hadn't and just turned to the right, marching with the legendary sucker tag following her from behind like a dark cloud. For a woman who loved gambling, she had bad luck. There was no one who matched her bad luck. The chances of her going on a winning streak were as slim as Orochimaru returning to the Leaf to apologize for his actions. Jiraiya followed the woman to a restaurant. He sat beside Shizune, and stared at her. His childhood crush. After a moment, he smiled, but the smile was not returned. What do you want? Tsunade demanded. No social calls. She was always cold to him. Maybe it was because he continued to annoy her about a return to the Leaf. She had once took a swing at him when he'd been trying out his luck. Lucky for him, she had been drunk but sober enough to reject going back to Konoha. Sensei sent me. He is still alive? Tsunade asked with a raised eyebrow. He still has some years left in him. Jiraiya responded in a serious tone. It is serious this time. Isn't it always? Jiraiya shook his head. You know he has always had a soft spot for his students. He was always kind. Even with Orochimaru. He refused to see the darkness within until it was too late. Orochimaru was just his favored student. Tsunade scoffed. Funny that his favored student was the one who turned on him and may most likely lead to his death. You could call Orochimaru sensei's protege. Jiraiya would not deny that. Unlike him, Orochimaru had been a genius. Just like their sensei. They could understand each other when they spoke. His former friend picked up things far quicker than him. In any case, he has also been willing in your case. He has said no more. Return to Konoha and run the village hospital. Or what? In the next issue of the bingo book, you will be placed as a rogue kunoichi. Tsunade laughed. Are you serious? Jiraiya looked at her sternly. It may not be much of a problem for you because you are a Sannin. But once the bounty is placed on your head, you'll have to look over your shoulder because that is how they will come after you. Whether you are drunk and out cold, they will come after you. They might get Shizune and you might make it, but for the rest of your life, you'll live like a criminal. That sounds like a threat. Jiraiya shook his head, smiling sadly. I hate to say those words to you, Haim, but Sensei is serious this time. He is even planning on having Orochimaru killed and everything he has built destroyed. Return home. But if not, know that before other hidden villages send the best after you, I will be the one coming after you first. Whether I have to break your legs to get it done, I'll do so. Tsunade narrowed her eyes dangerously. You speak as if you can. Jiraiya smiled sadly. No free hits this time, Haim. To say the snow country was detestable would be too strong of a word. But it wasn't likable either. Who lived in a country that was just eternally snow? There should be a season for the snow to fall and a season to be living under the shades of trees. But in this nation, it was just damn coldness and that reached the core of the bones. Naruto had only taken a couple of steps after getting off the ship, but he disliked this country already. Though reasons differed, he could understand a little when the princess said there was nothing in here. Thinking of the woman, he turned to her. She had tried running, but they already knew she was a runner. A leash was prepared for her. Figuratively at least. Still, she looked miserable. Even more so than normal now that she was in a land she'd been forced to enter. A daughter of the past daimyo, refusing to return to her home to help her suffering people. Yet, Naruto couldn't call her selfish. If he did the same, anybody who dared call him selfish needed a knock to the head to help them think properly. Standing beside her was Sakura. She looked fine, but he knew she was still burning over what their sensei told her. Around, the crew was standing up their cameras. They were ready for their act. Sandayu insisted on filming first before they even get to enter the streets of the snow. Thought you'd be against this. Kakashi shook his head, halting beside the blonde. I was, but the client has his needs. Besides, they will be drawn out here. Isn't it going to repeat the same situation as before? We don't have to worry about the ship getting wrecked. Naruto nodded. Hopefully one of them isn't able to join them. It makes it simpler. But there is still the boss. Unlikely to come at once, but we shall see. We just have to be ready for anything. To prepare, that was the best one could do at times, but sometimes no matter how you prepare, it was never enough. There were just some mountains that no amount of preparation could help you overcome. They just immense themselves in yaw, slowly suffocating you until you tap out. Yeah, Naruto paused, staring at the action behind the cameras. Sakura is taking the news with shock. Expected. Kakashi sighed. But she needs to accept it and grow. She hasn't changed her attitude no matter the challenges she has faced. She lives in a bubble. Being constantly saved, and not having to face any difficulties herself because we shield her, has made her into this. When everything is handed to you, you can't change their perception. You've done your part trying to change her, even with her infatuation with Sasuke. Obsession. Naruto corrected. She refuses to change. I can understand the Sandaim's worries in this situation. We were meant to balance each other. She was smart in the academy and did the basics well, but this is no longer the academy. If she cannot adapt to that, the only choice left is for her to go to another team or quit being a kunoichi. Kakashi's eyes narrowed slightly. The words came out coldly. Was it unexpected? No. Naruto was like that. Besides, Sakura was truly a burden to the team. He have to worry. Naruto had already offered to help. 10 long years of searching, and now she was finally here, having returned on her accord. Doto had taken over this country thinking there were riches, but instead, he'd killed his brother and inherited poverty. Of course, there was hidden treasure, and a treasure that could only be accessed by a key Kyuki had in her possession. After so many years, even knowing how she looked like had been a challenge. The key had been the crystal. She'd done well by changing her name and hiding in plain sight. He stared at his trusted subordinates with a bit of disappointment. It has been years, but for them to fail when their target was so close disturbed his patience. He no longer had any to begin with. His heart was burning with impatience. I expected you to return with the crystal, Nader. Nader looked down for a moment and then faced his boss. We encountered a problem that we were not expecting. I can see that. Doto replied in a flat tone. Fubuki wasn't with them. To lose an arm wasn't tolerable if there was nothing achieved. If they had gotten the crystal, then he could have understood things. They have already arrived and are setting up their things. We can handle them once we go. We will have a surprise for them. You failed when it was 3 of you. And now there is 2, can you succeed? We can, Doto-sama. Nader replied with complete confidence in his abilities and the armor. Go then. I'll join you shortly if I see you failing. Each with his own problems, huh? Naruto thought mildly as he held a cup of tea, Kyuki in front of him, a heater between them. The others were on the drawing table, after wrapping up the scene from here. The extras were all gathered around, having their meals while laughing and making comments about the great movie they were shooting. Naruto wasn't complaining. After all, he now had a role in the movie. How I wish Sakura understood a little bit of your pain and suffering. He said mildly. Maybe then, she would learn what it meant to be a kunoichi and wouldn't be so useless. Quite frankly, it was ridiculous that she thought of being useful to Sasuke but couldn't even help sharpen his knife simply because she didn't know how. Makeup. How many times to bath and then stare at the mirror, she could do that with the expertise of a professor. But the real job failed her miserably. Maybe it won't be so bad if she was removed from the team. Kyuki glanced at him and then drank her tea silently. It was suffocating having those cold blue eyes stare at her every moment. He was like a bug she couldn't shake off. Even when she had to go to the small room, he wouldn't let her out of his sight. Silence, huh? Naruto smiled. But still, this place is damn freezing. I'd die if I had to spend a whole month here. Once more it was just silence. But after a couple of moments, Kyuki spoke, but she was not replying to his statement. Why don't you just leave me alone? I'm here but I won't do anything Sandayu wants me to do. She said so hopelessly yet so firm. Smiling sadly, Naruto replied in a quiet tone. How I wish I was you. The people of this country want you. Maybe because they need a leader. Honestly, you are not one and can't save them. Yet, they want you. I think it is not fair. I can offer much to my village, yet its people do not want me. They'd celebrate my death. She glanced up at him curiously. His words were cold. He wasn't offering none of that annoying talk. She wanted to smile, but failed to do so. How lucky of me. Kyuki ended up responding with sarcasm. Yeah, Naruto said in the same tone as the princess. Well, whatever happens afterwards isn't our problem. We will do what we were hired to do and then depart. It will involve dealing with your uncle and that means there will be no one left to control this nation. It would be sad if you did not take up the role. Quite a mockery of what you play in the screens. I'm an actress. Is it irony that you chose to become an actress? Naruto asked with a smile. The fact that you still carry the crystal you know means you have not quite completely forgotten about home. It is good, but rather, he paused, hearing a different sound. Something is coming, he said, standing up to face the direction of the sound. A train, Sandayu shouted, seeing the tracks on the snow. Everyone get back. It must be Doto's men. Train. Now that was a foreign word. But he didn't need much explanation from anyone as the slithering machine roared to life while heading toward them. It was a different kind of transport that they used in the elemental nations. Instead of being amazed by this, take good care of the princess. Kakashi cautioned him. Naruto hadn't even felt the Jonin appear before him. She was the main target and they would protect her life even if it meant they had to watch everyone else die. You couldn't save everyone. No one had that power. But it didn't stop people from hoping. Got her, Naruto replied. The train came to a halt in front of them. Everyone else was standing back while to avoid any casualties. Give us the princess and we will be on our way from here. A cold booming voice from the train called out. Well, that is a stupid request to make. Sasuke said calmly, already on a stance. Even if there was nothing to lose, he would not give her away. Not when it would result in him going away without a fight. Sensei, I'm feeling a bit motivated. Do you mind if I destroy the train? It could be weapon for all we know. Kakashi glanced at Naruto. This definitely had something to do with meeting Orochimaru. He'd never seen Naruto use this much of Mokuton in just one mission. After a moment, he nodded. Go ahead. Sakura, you're with Kyuki. Hi. Naruto nodded his head, and did an signs before holding his hands together. Mokuton, deep forest creation. The ground trembled slightly even though they stood on snow. Within seconds, trees sprouted from the snow. It was like a large, dense forest. As quick as they sprouted, they marched toward the train. There was no resistance. The trees burst through the train. They ripped it apart as if they were alive. Within a minute, the roots had entirely decimated the train and now rested on the snow with chunks of the train submerged underneath. Impressed, Kakashi was. But he did not miss the look from Sasuke when Naruto released his jutsu. He would have commented on it if their opponents hadn't stepped out of the wreckage to stare at from the roots. Naruto, Sasuke, you take Mizore, I'll handle Nader. The Jonin said, pushing up his headband. There was no need to hang about without taking things too seriously from the get-go. Naruto faced Sasuke for a second and then spoke. So, Sasuke, how do we handle this one? Genjutsu surely doesn't work because of the armor he wears. Sasuke still felt threatened by the jutsu Naruto had displayed. He couldn't do anything like that. And Naruto was keeping it from him. He clenched his jaws in anger and then faced the man standing above the roots Naruto had created. Where do you think the boss is? Hiding somewhere, most likely. Naruto responded in thought. It just means we need to keep an eye on the princess. I will have a clone keep watch, just in case. Can't have Sakura as the last defense line. We'd be screwed. Sasuke grunted in agreement. He activated his Sharingan. He had no appetite to make things longer. He just wanted to end this quickly. And besides, he was a little ticked off after what he'd seen, and Naruto was ignoring his mood, purposefully. Let's go. Both dashed toward Mizore. Mizore glared at Naruto specifically. The blonde had cost him. And because of the two, they no longer had Fubuki. Mizore could see the two brats darting toward him. They hoped to flank him. Stupid brats. The blonde usually sent out a clone to charge first. Which meant the real one was probably hiding somewhere. Maybe below him. Maybe behind. Either way, he was going to show up somewhere. And he had to be ready for that. The Uchiha was on his right. He could deal with the clone later. He released his metal claw. The hand sped toward Sasuke. Within a second, it had reached the Uchiha. But he jumped over it. Mizore was caught watching Sasuke as the Uchiha twisted in midair, and then hurled 4 small shuriken at him. That was nothing, Mizore thought. His armor would protect him. His eyes flashed toward his left. Naruto was closer. He started retreating his claw. I'm not going to fall for the same trick again. Naruto reached him, his right hand stretched out for a pathetic attempt to punch him on his upper body. His large hand grabbed the punch and he squeezed. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Mizore's eyes quickly flashed below. There was nowhere he was going to come out from aside from below. Hidden within the dense roots. To his shock, nothing came from below. Worse, instead of bouncing off his armor, the shuriken twisted around his body. It was then that he realized the threads tied to the shuriken. His hands became wrapped along his body. Mizore swore. He attempted to use his strength and the armor to cut off the threads. But, it was the sound of birds chirping that alarmed him. He glanced to the right through the corner of his eyes. The Uchiha was darting through the roots in speed, lightning crackling on his right hand. On the left, Naruto had his own jutsu. A small round ball of chakra. The two blurred out of sight. The next second, they had closed the distance. The Uchiha wasn't in front of him, but slightly above the air, swinging his jutsu toward his chest. The jutsu slammed, causing sparks of lightning to light. The blonde was in similar position. His jutsu slammed onto his back. Mizore felt his armor breaking. He felt relief when the two suddenly flashed away from him. But, relief turned into horror. His body was plastered with explosive tags. And one glaring heater, planted with tags, came falling down. It was on slow motion. In front of him. His armor had already was no surviving this. He closed his eyes. Boom. From a distance, both Naruto and Sasuke landed on the snow, watching the fireworks. Well, that was effective. The collective effort is truly something to behold. Naruto remarked, congratulating himself on a job well done. To effectively deal with their opponent with strategies and not just raw power was quite fun. Your tags were a little too much. You used them on the last occasion as well. Sasuke was staring. How many did you even bring for the mission? All my stock. I don't use a lot of weapons. I usually just buy kunai. But I'm not usually throwing them around like you. So I can spend the earnings on tags. Sasuke shook his head. I hope they explode on you. I'd die. Nobody would cry. Now, you're just being cold. You mad I showed you up with that jutsu? Naruto asked with a smirk on his face. Sasuke glared. He had nothing like that. But then again, he didn't have the same amount of chakra Naruto had. He wasn't even using the power of the Beu inside of him. Just how much more powerful could Naruto become? No matter what he seemed to do, the blonde always seemed to pull something of his magic hat. It was bothering him. Seeing the look, Naruto shook his head. Disappointing. Truly is. To think that you would feel so inferior over a little jutsu. Truly, a fragile person you are. I'm not fragile, Sasuke replied in a forceful tone. A hint of anger in his voice. But I hate that you seem to always have something in your tank. Naruto raised an eyebrow. If Sasuke unlocked the potential of the Sharingan, there was nothing to discuss. Oh, this power-hungry fool. Say, Sasuke, if Orochimaru offered you power, would you take it? Why wouldn't I? He has certainly helped you. Sasuke replied without giving it any thought. Once more, Naruto shook his head. Disappointing once more. It would be a pity if you abandoned everyone simply because your little pride was hurt. You shoal, Doto wasn't pleased to see his trusted guards failing. The brats had taken care of Mizore quite easily and Nader was fighting a losing battle. Why did he have to do everything himself? Should he have bothered to give them the same armor as his? He shook his head. No need. They were weak. Hence they failed. The target was before him anyway. Within seconds, he was in front of Kyuki. He completely disregarded the girl guarding her. Kyuki. The princess glared at the man who was her uncle. The killer of his own brother. For power. For wealth. What disgusting things people do to even those of their blood. Seeing his cold glare, she felt afraid. Afraid for her life. She didn't even have the crystal with her. Was he going to kill her? Was she going to die? She shouldn't have come here. Even when Sakura stepped in front of her, holding out a kunai, Kyuki didn't feel safe. She felt even sorry for the girl. She was clearly afraid of the giant in front of her. Yet she still braved. Don't waste your life on me, Kyuki said hopelessly. Sakura gritted her teeth. Her heart was pounding. But she couldn't fold. Even when the princess had given up. This was her mission. What good was she if she couldn't even stand guard for a second? This is my job, Sakura shouted, more to herself than to Kyuki. If you want the princess, you'll have to go through me first. Doto didn't even think before lifting his right foot. He wanted to swat the girl away from his target. But while his foot was airborne, heading straight to the face of the stricken girl, a root suddenly burst from the ground, catching it around the ankle. He was held firmly. He narrowed his eyes, and quickly flashed his right arm, palm open. Naruto saw the hand coming toward him but did nothing to avoid it. It was like an iron grip on his face. Struggling was a waste of energy. But he still struggled to break free. Perhaps it was the instinctive nature of the mind. If the ground had been solid, he would have felt the pain through his back when the man slammed him down. But there was just the puff sound as he was buried deep into the snow. Doto looked up. The girl had moved away. The princess had also been moved back with the other brat. He attempted to stomp on the blonde, but he rolled away. Doto didn't follow. He glanced back at the princess. It was merely just going to take a couple of more minutes and effort, but he was going to get his price. Slowly, he started moving toward the princess. His movements came to a halt. A ripple pattern just around his right shoulder. He felt like he was being sucked in. He couldn't get away. His arm as the first casualty. He swore, crying inwardly as pain shot through his spine. His arm was torn from his shoulder. The blood gushing out and the feeling that his entire body was going to get sucked in wasn't the biggest worry. No, the pain that had him frozen. And the pull he felt on side of his ribcage. Lucky for him, the strange wormhole pulled parts of his advanced armor. It wasn't a decent pull. It left the right side exposed. A bit of flesh showing. And then the thing suddenly stopped. He fell on his knees. Gasping for air. He couldn't do anything to stop the blood from gushing out. A bit of bleed on his Sharingan, Kakashi ignored it and the pain. In Sasuke's fashion but with more purpose, speed and strength, he darted through the snow, heading straight toward his fallen enemy. Seeing the incoming attack, Doto flapped the wings of his armor. Good thing for him, they were still working. He felt relief. He could escape and try again. This wasn't what he wanted, but there was no other way. Not in his state. The relief he felt turned into despair after picking up into the air. His feet had already left the ground, but roots protruded from the ground, wrapping around his ankles. As he struggled to pull away, the Konoha shinobi lunged. Reikiri. He was precise in where he hit. The part on his chest where the armor was torn off. The shock went in his body. Lightning. He couldn't help but yelp in pain as the jutsu stabbed into his body. He felt like it hit his lungs. No, it didn't it? That was his thought as he began to fall down the ground. Everything turning upside down, his vision becoming blurry. In a thud, he hit the snow. Kakashi landed on one knee, his breathing labored slightly. He closed his Sharingan, quickly put the headband to cover it. Well, you took care of things quickly. Naruto's mysterious tone filled his airwaves. Kakashi turned to the blonde, standing beside him with his hands held together. We had to. I used a little bit of chakra with the Sharingan. You hardly use it. I know it does take a lot from you. But if you don't train yourself to use it, you never get used to it. I mistake reliance with training. Kakashi replied earnestly as he gathered his breath. He then stood up. We don't even know if there are more who will come. And there is still much work to do here. There was no reason to prolong a battle when the client was watching. Besides, he pointed at the armed civilians coming along the way. If they had arrived while he was still standing, there would have been casualties. Naruto finished for his sensei. Yes. I took the best option to avoid that. Naruto nodded. Well, if that is it for the enemy, we can spend the rest of our time in leisure. And I can enjoy that movie part 1 earned for myself. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.